Module 2, AutoCAD Online. Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm going to talk about the fundamentals in Chapter 2 for harnessing AutoCAD. As you can see, I've already opened up my AutoCAD software program, and we're going to take a look at Module 2. Module 2 goes over additional fundamentals for creating geometric figures. And I've given you a number of resources here, some PowerPoint information for the chapter, which you can click on and view, and some YouTube links that better describe absolute and relative coordinates. We're going to get started by looking at our objectives. We're going to look at the line, rectangle, and circle commands, and we're going to construct some geometric figures. So I'm going to switch back over to my interface, and let's take a look at the draw commands. AutoCAD creates what they call geometric figures, and it provides you with a lot of different ways to draw these different objects. And so in our draw menu, we have lines, polylines, circles, arcs, rectangles, ellipses. We can also do hatch patterns, and then there's some sub creation geometry that we can do as well. But to start off with, we're just going to look at lines. What I'd like you to do is to select this downward arrow here, and let's get our interface set up. Use the show menu bar, and that'll give us options to additional places to find these commands. And the other thing I want you to do is to take a look at your layout, and down here at the bottom I want you to make sure that you have right clicked the setting to be set at do not use icons. So I'm going to uncheck use icons, and the reason I do that is so that we can see the different words for these different object snap and different settings. So let's take a look at drawing lines. If I select the line command, I'm going to be prompted for the first point. Now my heads up cursor is on, and that's on because the DYN value is selected to be on. And what that will do is give me a point in space relative to my origin, and my origin is where my X and Y plane are. So I can click a line, and as I bring that line out, it gives me somewhat of a rubber banding effect with the length of that line. If I turn on polar, polar allows me to go through and measure these lines. And this is really great because what I can do is I can set this up using polar, and I can say I want a 5-inch line, and so I'll select the start point, and then I will create a tracking line, which is this green line, and then I can type 5 and enter, and that'll be a 5-inch line. I can track down this way, type 5, enter, track this way, 5, enter, and then I can close that. I can hit escape to pick up the cursor. I can erase these lines by selecting them with a selection box and then selecting the erase command. You'll notice that when it's selected, I'll get this highlighted. You'll also notice that this box has popped up, and this box is called the Quick Properties box. If I uncheck it, I won't get it. If I check it, I will. And Quick Properties will do things like allow me to change quickly properties of those line elements. And so, for example, if I wanted to change the color to red, I could change that to red in Quick Properties. I can disable these grips by hitting escape. I can erase them with a selection set, and so I can select a line, and then I can select the erase command. I can select by selecting a window like this, which would be blue. When the window is blue, it will only select lines completely within the box, versus when it's green, it will select everything that it touches, even if it isn't completely within the box. And then I can erase those. So that's a quick demonstration on drawing lines in selection sets. We can draw rectangles. I'm going to turn off my quick properties because it kind of gets in the way with a rectangle command where I can come in here like this. On the website, I have some other information for you. If we take a look at these different line commands, there are certain properties that that line will have. And the properties that that line has are properties like color, line type, and line weight. And if I come back here to my interface here, these are the properties. And the properties here are stronger than the properties that we'll look at in the layer command, and we'll look at that in the next module. So if I override the color and I say I want everything to be red, and then I come in here and I draw a rectangle, I'll have a red rectangle. I can increase some of the complexity of this by saying I want a red rectangle that's 0.5 mm, 0.5 millimeters, and I want to see that by turning on the line weight button. That'll show my thickness of my lines. And so as we draw things, what we will do is we will be using line weights so that we will follow certain ANSI drafting principles, American National Standards Institute. And what they do is they specify different line types and different line weights for our drawings. Back to Module 2, so we can see that we can override, or we can set different line types, and we can also set different colors and line weights. We can set up different drafting settings. So for example, we could set up a snap setting for 1/2 inch grid in snap. So if I come back here, I'm going to erase these. With a crossing window, I've selected them, and then I will select the erase command. If I turn on a grid and a snap, I can do that a couple of ways. One is under Tools, Drafting Settings, and I can go and say, okay, give me a snap with a 1/4 inch setting, and put a grid on there with a 1/2 inch setting. And I'll OK that, and then I can go in here and I can draw a box that would be, let's say, 5 inches, and you'll notice that the numbers now snap nice and neatly. And this is the old way of doing CAD, snap and grid, where I could set up a grid and a snap, and my cursor will highlight those values and stick within those parameters. The new way, and it's a much faster way, is not to use snap and grid, so I'll turn them off. It's to use polar. And so if I'm going to use polar, I can select a starting point, I establish a tracking line, and I can then use a direct distance command of 5. As long as I'm tracking, I can do direct distance. Tracking meaning I have that green line, and I'll say 5. And then I can come here and I can say C for close. So a couple of different drawing techniques that I can use using my drafting settings. Our coordinate system is set within the program, and we use a Cartesian coordinate system with an x-axis going horizontal and a y-axis going vertical. And in the textbook, it's got an example of a connect the dots kind of an activity. And so somewhere in the book, it's got a coordinate table that has students go and put these points down. And so what we would do would be to set up a point style by typing dd point type, and then by creating these different values, or inputting these values within the point command. And that will then place points at the specific x value and y value. So the point would be located at 3 and 4.7, 3 and 44.5. And I've done that for you. If you click on the train drawing and you say open, we can kind of take a look at that. And this is on page 55 of the textbook. And so here's my connect the dots steam engine. And what I can do is I can look at my utilities here, and I can ID points, and I can get an idea of some of the coordinate values. And so if I say ID point and I set my O snap, I'm going to right click on that for node being on, it should be blue. And then when I go to my ID point, I can get the coordinate value of that. So if I click on this point, it's going to give me 41.5, comma 33.0. I can come back here and I can say ID point. I can look at this point right here, and I can get that point at 4.5, 34.5. This point somehow seems to be off. I'm not sure if that's something from the textbook that's an error, but what I found was this point at 18.5 and 33 was not quite looking like the right spot for it. And it may be, as I look at this even further, that this point here should be down and then this point should be up. So feel free to take a look at that drawing and be able to analyze points and be able to look at those values. You'll also notice that the coordinate values are over here in the lower left hand corner. And that's not to say that drawing these drawings you have to be very coordinate point orientated, but it's there as a mathematical tool, and it's very useful. You can also draw things without inputting the coordinates every time and doing that by eye. Some other additional things in the chapter that we'll look at is the Cartesian coordinate system and the origin for that. So I'm going to start up a new drawing. I'm going to turn off my grid, and this icon in the corner here is where my 0 is located at x0 and y0. That is my user coordinate system. And one of the exercises that I'll do next is going to talk to us a little bit about how that user coordinate system is used to create drawings. Some other things in the chapter are drawing things like arcs. Arcs are really pretty straightforward. We can do arcs a number of different ways. 3-point arc, start, center, end. And we'll demonstrate these arc in construction techniques as we go on and do some of the projects. We've talked a bit about selecting objects. We've gone through and erased the objects. So this is pretty much a recap, or at least a review of the first module, or excuse me, the second module. In the next video I'll go through and demonstrate the drawing labs.